Good night. Mahari here with another comment response. On the podcast episode on my channel, What Do Borderlines Need? 9 Red Flags You Can't Help Them, and Why You Will Be Punished for Caring, for Loving, Trying to Help, etc. Well, that's not all in the title, but you get the drift. I hope. A person leaves a comment on that podcast episode of mine. So the question with this is, like, do people with BPD hide who they really are? Do people with BPD hide behind a mask? Do they have a mask? Do they try to fool you when you first meet them? What happens with that? So do people with BPD hide who they really are? And then do they have any conscious agenda to try to isolate people? Do you think that BPDs are isolating to try to control you, to maintain their sense of what you're actually meaning to them, which is really not what you hope and want it to be, what you mean to them? Could this be a red flag that the borderline's hiding behind a mask to fool you, to get you into a relationship? I don't really think so, but this commenter says one of the huge problems is that the BPD person will hide their, BPD behavior. So why don't we adjust that then? Can borderlines hide their behavior to seduce you into a relationship? Do borderlines hide their behavior to make you fall in love with them? What happens with that? So this person is saying it's a huge problem that the person with BPD, they'll hide their behavior, BPD behavior, in order to get you emotionally invested to the point where leaving is not just extremely difficult, but maybe even near impossible. What happens in the beginning of these relationships and how you meet that person with BPD and how you fall for them, how you start to really have deep feelings for them, and they seem to be like they're mirroring you, and it doesn't mean you're falling in love with yourself, by the way. I've heard people say that out there. To me, that's just silly. No, you're not meeting the real person, but people with BPD aren't that devious usually, even though they can do other devious types of things and be very manipulative and very impactful, very painful, causing you pain, very negatively impacting to you, suffering and the agony of the trauma bond. And let me just say again, that what this commenter is saying, I don't believe is true of most people with BPD or suspected BPD, but like not diagnosed. Most of them are not consciously trying to hide behavior from you in order to get you emotionally invested, right? Get you wanting to continue dating, and then they're very intense and they're in a hurry for everything because they're very needy. And so all of that is kind of real where they're coming from. They're putting their best foot forward because they're excited, and they're excited to get to know you, well, in the sense that, hey, this is somebody else that they can feel like they can seek identity through and feel more secure with and all of that. But that's not the conscious part. All they know that they're doing is they really look at somebody and they're really like, oh, I want to know this person, etc. Like, I don't really believe they have this big agenda on a conscious level. Could other things be going on unconsciously? Of course. And I can't say all people with BPD don't know. Some may well know they're hiding behavior, but I don't think it's most people. And I don't think it's that planned, organized, or targeted. What is also important about this that people with codependency don't like to hear is that when they are, whether they're hiding that BPD behavior or not, whether they're consciously aware of that or not, you can't put the blame on them for how you started to get emotionally invested in them, because they don't make you do that. They can't make you do that. And that's where people with codependency, or people who've been a partner or now an ex or whatever's happening with somebody with BPD. And yes, it's very difficult once you've been emotionally invested. You get attached, whether that's anxious or anxious avoidant or avoidant attachment, whatever attachment style people with codependency may have, because people with BPD have disorganized attachment, which for many people with BPD means they're really just not even able to attach, and they're not really going to attach, and they don't really attach, and they don't really love you in any healthy, adult, consistent, congruent, mutual, reciprocal way at all. It's childlike love. When this person says that they hide their behavior to get you invested to the point where leaving is not just extremely difficult, but maybe even near impossible, no, you can't park all that on the person with BPD. Because people who get into relationships with these people are making their own choices and usually haven't heard of BPD. And it's terrible. It's awful. On the other end of it, on the other side, breaking up, leaving, or getting ghosted or being discarded, and not any of the hoovering back and forth, the no closure. I mean, it's agonizing for people. It's incredibly hard to leave. It's a trauma bond. But people with codependency have to remember, anybody who has been with somebody with BPD, and like this commenter more than likely, like, you can't blame the borderline for how you got there. And the trauma bond reality of the way that these relationships start, and again, often people, the first time especially, right, obviously, don't know anything about BPD. And not everybody that has suspected BPD, or even who's been diagnosed, knows that they have BPD. So they can't all be hiding BPD behavior if they don't even know they have such a thing, right? And what that means. So people with codependency need to take responsibility not for anything that a person with BPD does to you, because in the beginning, they can't make you want to fall in love with them. They can't make you emotionally invest in them. Do a lot of BPD women and maybe some BPD men, do they really use their looks and or physical relations and that kind of excitement? Well, yes, they can weaponize it and they can use it, but guess what? You're still on the other side, attracted to it, wanting it, and they're not making you have relations with them. They're not making you love them or be emotionally invested in them or care greatly about them at all. So that's where codependent responsibility comes in. And that's not that you're responsible for anything else a person with BPD did to you, but they don't do this starting the relationship. They don't make you do it. That's a little bit like difficult for a lot of people to hear, but no, they don't hide BPD behavior just to the point of enough to get you emotionally invested. Your emotional investment is your responsibility. And yes, people get emotionally invested with these people without knowing what is happening for them and that they might have BPD or they've been diagnosed with it. But so do a lot of people who might have BPD or been diagnosed with it not know, just like you don't. And then the commenter says, or in a case I've seen personally where they convinced their partner to move. Okay, again, convincing a partner to move. They can't make you move. This is where you have to take the responsibility for anybody who would move with a person with cluster B or BPD, needs to take responsibility for the choice that they made to move. And yeah, you might be getting emotionally blackmailed. You might be getting, like, if you don't move with me, like, it's over, etc. But people still, even under those circumstances, make choices. And I just want to add in that I have a couple of videos up on this channel about this relationship. I think you can see them on my community tab if you can't otherwise find them, wherein I talk about a relationship that I got involved with somebody. Very complicated, but no, the involvement part, because it wasn't just like meeting out, it wasn't meeting online, it wasn't meeting in the real world socially. And if you want to know more about that, you can check out those two videos. They're on my community tab, so there's not a lot there. You'll see them. But I was with a person with BPD, NPD, who was an alcoholic. And I actually was like convinced, I don't know. We had the on and offs, and she did ghosting a few times. But I moved twice for that person. I don't know what to say right now because I don't want anybody to like judge themselves, be hard on themselves as I was on myself. This quote relationship, this situationship started in late December of 2003. And like I said, she ghosted. It was kind of on, off, up, down. And it starts in one city. And then she takes off to another city in a ghosting episode of whatever. And then when she hoovers me back, and yeah, there I was, getting hoovered. I still had codependency back then. Like, I've done a lot of work on that since, for sure. It's like early 2004, like about spring of 2004, that she's hoovering me back. hoovering me, and then I start talking to her, and I already know this is no good for me. Like, I've already got the red flags, but you know how we get going forward. But we do what we do because something is driving us to do it that we need to learn more about. And I'm out here to work with people to help you learn about that, or how to break the trauma bond, how to really get over what feels impossible to get over, or end the relationship, or break up with them if they haven't ghosted or discarded you. When I was with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, started in one city. She ghosted me. It went to another city, about 2 hours from the other city. And then she hoovers me back. Then it's all about she's coming to visit, emailing, all that stuff. And it's like, well, you got to move down here. It wasn't a huge move, but still. And I knew people in the city, and it's not far from the other city, you know what I mean? But so I moved down there. So it was London, Ontario, that city. And then things don't go so well there. It's the same. I mean, it's awful. It's just what it was. And so we weren't living in the same place, but we were living just like where the city where it started. And we were living about a block and a half from each other. But the thing is, so all the stuff goes on in this relationship, and I won't bore you with it. You can hear a bit about it in those videos if you want to. But the thing is, then she ghosts again. There was a couple other ghostings in between and other things that were going on. But anyway, then she ghosts again, and we moved in together long. So stuff happened, I don't want to bore you with it. So then we did move in together after on, off, crazy stuff. And then I come home one day, and she has taken off and ghosted again, and left me this note. I see this envelope on the kitchen counter, and I go over and open it and I read it, and she says, I have no idea why this happened, but she says something like, it was long, but like the gist of it was, I've gone somewhere, I'm protecting myself or something. I've gone somewhere where you can't find me, so don't even bother looking for me. And I'm like, I really wasn't hurting this person. It was quite the opposite. So I was like, what? And I guess I was supposed to feel abandoned by that or whatever. And I just went, well, okay, whatever. Second time around, right? Or third time, actually. So long story short, then she tells me a bunch of lies. So I'm starting to get on with my life because she goes away again. Starting to get on with my life. I know people in that city been around it before. And it's community share, like between the city I came from to that city in London, Ontario. Yeah, like I wasn't leaving all my friends behind or couldn't, wasn't getting totally isolated. But I was getting isolated in another way, because who wants to tell your friends, who wants to tell people about this, because people think you're crazy. And I've had a lot of clients express that to me, and I've been through it. So I don't want to talk about me this whole video so quickly. Then she tells a bunch of lies, emails me again. I've started dating other people, which wasn't, it's kind of against my rule anyway, or what I recommend for clients. And so just a little dating, though, nothing serious. But I have old friends, and I met some new friends, and so I'm doing kind of okay, I guess, at that point, but so I thought, but it wasn't over yet. So then one day she shows up in my email again, and I'm like, oh, and I knew I shouldn't, but like so many of you can relate, it's like, but I gotta have an answer. And plus she was pulling on my heartstrings with all kinds of lies and manipulations and all that. So I email her back, we get to emailing, blah, 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 time goes by, then she says, I want to come and visit you, and she's lying about what city she's in at this point, and she's in a city in central Ontario, actually Peterborough, Ontario. So anyway, she's coming to visit me on every other weekend or whatever, and nothing is great there. There's no re-idealization. It's still the same up and down all over the map, awful crap. With very, little breadcrumbs maybe, kind of, but not really. So that goes on for some months, and then she tells me about the lie she told me, because she's not really coming from this other city, and where she's really living. And then we meet, we're meeting on weekends, and then it gets to the point where sometimes we're getting along, but you know how that goes, and then no, and then she's triggered, and then it's like hell on wheels. And anyways, in one of the not so bad times, if I can put it that way, but it was all really actually not good. No real love there from that person. Thank you very much. I gave as much as I could give. I get, borderline takes everything you got. Well, borderline narcissist alcoholic was taking everything I had, but I was there. I'm responsible for not getting out sooner, right? Like, that's how I feel about it. So then we're laying on the living room floor one day, just like, fully clothed, everything, just laying on the living floor. She pulls out a map. I know where Peterborough is. I that part of my past with my family of origin, relatives there, etc. I know people there. This is all, in Ontario, not, I don't know how many hours Peterborough was from London. It's not insurmountable distances. So anyway, yeah, she's talking to me about, you should come and move here, and we'll get a townhouse, and we'll do this, and we'll do that, and no, we'll just do the same stuff, and I'll just keep getting really, like, betrayed and annihilated as I was getting in that relationship. But like, that part was my decision. So then we moved to Peterborough. So I moved from the original city to London to Peterborough. That is 3 moves, right? And then, of course, when I finally got out of this mess, and then I had to move back to the original city. So with 4 moves involved in this, but I felt more isolated in Peterborough, and things got a little more intense, and she was a lot more abusive, and so it was there that I would end it, then try to be her friend for a little while. So anyway, I don't want to get in all that, and then when I ended that, and etc., you can hear about it in the other videos. But just know I've walked miles in your shoes too, and I know what it's like to be on the other side of cluster B, and I've also had 2 BPD X's and etc., and one video about one of them, Quiet Borderline, is also on my community tab. But the point is, just know that if you resonate with me and you want to work with me, I've been all through what you're going through. And I know how impossible it feels. And I ruminated, and I bawled, and I had trouble focusing, and I went cognitive dissonance. The only thing that I finally did do, it was really hard to do, but after being in Peterborough, what transpired there, and that would be less than a year, well, about a year, maybe more, when I finally said to her, I'm done, it's over, forget it, get out of here, I never looked back. But that, I remember the hell of that part in time. So, but I own it, and I think that each one of you owe it to yourself to own it, because the borderline isn't responsible for everything, or the borderline narcissist, but they are responsible for a ton. So yeah, I mean, I got somewhat isolated, more so in the last move. And this commenter is saying, or he saw personally, where they somebody convinced a partner to move with them to another city, and at that point, their partner gave up all their friends, their job, everything to move to the city, far enough away that you can end up isolated, losing contact with them all, and end up in a financially, economically depressed city where you can't even get a job. Well, this could still happen for people for sure, but I mean, I'll just say I was fortunate, because even more in Peterborough felt more isolating, but I did still know a few people up there, and I met some new people, and I was still in touch with my other friends, but I didn't see them as much. But the other thing is that I was lucky I work online, right? So I mean, that didn't really matter in that regard. But yeah, people could get into the situation. But why I shared my experience with this is because I know that I had to own that those were my choices. She didn't make me, she might have used some manipulation and some tactics along the way, but I had to own that I made those choices, just like this person that the commenter is talking about. As horrible as it is what you go through and how much you get hurt, and how badly they can abuse and treat you awfully, if you make a decision to move with one of them, they haven't made you do it, okay, as bad as it is. And then at that point, their partner had 0 resources with which to leave and was literally trapped. Well, I'm not going to say that isn't the case or couldn't happen to somebody for real, but there's always a way out. There is always a way out. So I think that's what's really key about this, because just as people with BPD aren't hiding their BPD behavior, because a lot of them don't have a clue they have BPD, a lot of them don't know that they've been diagnosed with it, because not every clinician will tell a person they've diagnosed with BPD that they have. And what about all the people that are with people they know or suspect highly, and they got all the patterns of BPD, but they've never been diagnosed? They're supposed to know they have BPD. So just as what the commenters started off with, again, I would call on each one of you that are hearing this to realize, where's your personal responsibility? Now, I'm not saying you're responsible for when they abuse you, how they scream at you, yell at you, silent treatment you, split you to valuation, ghost. No, you're not responsible for any of that. But when you continue to move for them, as I did for one, or you do that type of thing, you're responsible for your own choices. And do we feel in those moments like we can't make any other possible choice? Yeah, I think I could say I felt like that, but it wasn't true. Just as people can have zero resources, and this happens, by the way, to way many more women with borderline men than men with borderline women, but I'm not saying it couldn't happen to men as well. It's horrible either way. But the thing is that, so at that point, their partner had zero resources with which to leave and was literally trapped. But there's no such thing as literally trapped. So let me just take a page out of, I'll say this real quick, because I know men are being abused by many cluster B women in all kinds of different ways. It's horrible. It's inexcusable, point blank. And there aren't the resources for men in those situations. So like if the commenter was talking about a man that moved with a woman and, gave up friends and then maybe like couldn't find a job and like, be a lot of financial, it'd be really hard. But then that person, as a man, that would be really tough. I gotta say, that would be much harder. Because they would have to probably have someone to reach out to, like a friend, even if they hadn't talked to them for a long time, or a family member. Because here's the reality. For women who are with borderline or narcissistic men, and this happens to them, and they made the choice to move, they have shelters and distress lines to call all over the place. And that's what's, I think, partly an issue that still needs, I don't know why it hasn't happened, or if it is happening in certain places, it's still an issue that men need more resources. Because if this commenter is describing a man that got trapped like that with zero resources and didn't have any money, then that man would have a really hard time finding a place to go. I know in Ontario there are places to go. You could go into the emergency department of a hospital to find a mental health person to talk to. But there are a lack of resources. But when that happens, then it's not fair. And a person with BPD had a lot to do with it, right? What this commenter is talking about. And let me know if this has ever happened to you. You may feel a lot of shame around it, but I hope maybe you've worked through some of that. And by the way, I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And the other thing is, so this could happen to people. And what I'm saying is, if you move to another city and you end up isolated, and it's in a lot of places these days, hard to find a job, right? And if you gave up a job and etc. and you get trapped like that, yes, that can happen. That could be really real, but it's not a stop sign, right? There has to be, and by the way, if anybody's stuck, like I would recommend you could purchase and book a session with me. I can help you. We will find a way to start helping you get out, because there's always a way. But there isn't always a way that people understand, or that they even feel like they can leave anyway. And all of this comes to bear to be a really, I don't know how to put it, a 10 times worse situation than the most horrible situations that all these breakups, etc. are. But again, just remember your responsibility in your choices, in being attracted to that woman or man, being really hungry to get physical with that person, emotionally investing in that person. So many of them can't be consciously hiding anything or BPD behavior because they don't even know they have it. Or if they've been diagnosed and told, they've forgotten a long time ago because they're denying it. And then the responsibility even after. So people if you make moves with a cluster B, you're responsible for it. I know I did it. And then you have to get yourself out of there. And by the way, it was a time in my life where, just for various few reasons, it was really difficult for me to organize a move back from that city to the city where it all started, but where I wanted to go back to Toronto. And the thing about that is, like, I had to hire people because, I didn't want to have friends driving 5 hours one way and 5 hours another way to get. So And besides movers and packers and, I had to hire some other people because I got myself out of there, but I left my whole apartment sitting there. I needed to go. And then I had to hire people to get my stuff to where I went. And that wasn't her responsibility. So, but everything else that they do to you and how they're hurting you, etc., they are responsible for that 100%. But it doesn't mean that we lose our choice points, but many people aren't aware of those choice points. Many people are just so caught up in it all, so hurt. You're losing yourself. You're busy arguing with them all the time. They're triggered. What's going on now? You're trying to caretake. Because the self-abandonment of people in these relationships, and even though I knew better in a way, I know now what got me in. Like, I know how she baited me. I was very baited, whatever, okay? But I still made the choice to bite the freaking hook. And when I bit the freaking hook, and when I moved 3 times for this person, etc., BPD, NPD, alcoholic, no, she did a lot of stuff to me that I had nothing to do with. It wasn't my fault, right? But she didn't make me move. And she didn't make me keep pursuing her, right? After the ghosting and everything like that. So did she do a whole lot of other stuff for which she was 100% responsible? Absolutely. So I hope you can see the delineation of what I'm trying to say. I don't know that too many people get isolated in the way that this person said they know somebody who did. But I mean, it could happen. And so, but there's no way to preempt this, right? Like, I wish I could create a course, do a book, do a series of videos, and be like, here's how not to end up with a borderline or a BPD, NPD, or a cluster B. Here's how to save yourself from the very get-go. But nobody would find it. Nobody would buy it. Nobody would read it. Why? Because when you're meeting these people, you don't have a clue. Like, online borderline personality disorders talked about by everybody, their mother, and everybody, like everybody. And like every ex now thinks that they know enough now too to help others. And yeah, it's pretty dicey out there in a lot of cases. No offense to people who've been with somebody with BPD and tremendously wounded and hurt. But the point is, you got to heal before you can help anyone else. You better start helping yourself. Out here to work with you if I resonate with you. But so the key thing here, I better state it and delineate it again, is that they don't force you into a relationship. They don't force you to want to make love to them. They don't force you to want to invest in them emotionally. They can't force you to move. Oh, there might be applied manipulations and there might be ultimatums, but you always have the choice. And I know it feels like in a trauma-bonded relationship, it feels like you don't have the choice. I know, I lived that. But what I learned through my experience with that was with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, was it definitely made a series of choices that were absolutely no good for me. And I did abandon myself. And I did learn throughout, well, actually in the middle of the relationship, more toward the end of the relationship, because this is what I am an expert in. And yeah, I'm human and it happened to me. But you should listen to my videos on my community tab for the beginning of how it really happened. It's a little bit different, but still. So the thing is, anyway, I was able to figure out, and this is what I work with clients to do, amid the healing process, really important to figure out how you got there. Really important to figure out why and how you abandon yourself over and over. Really important to understand that the borderline or the narcissist or the BPD, NPD comorbid does not force you into a relationship. They do not keep you in a relationship. I mean, yes, they can use tactics and they can traumatize you, but you still always have a choice. But when you're abandoning yourself, as I know I abandoned myself for that person in that situationship, then we feel like we don't make choices. We feel like they do everything to us. They do everything else to us, but they don't make us make certain choices that at the end of the day, there's no way out of this, no way to get help to be able to work through it all and understand it and break free if you don't realize that they're not making you do everything you do. But you are losing yourself to them. So it's really important to think about that if you haven't. And like I said, I'm out here to work with people that resonate with me because I can help you. We can start from wherever you're at to talk about that and how you feel. And you might feel like they totally controlled you might not be aware of your choice points. And it sounds like maybe that might be the case with this commenter, but I don't know. So if you're not aware of your choice points at some point in a healing recovery journey, then you're not going to be able to break the trauma bond. And even if you feel like you're moving on with your life, so many people out there, like comments on my channel here and other people's channels, people are saying really often, painfully, unfortunately, that they've been away from the person with BPD because maybe it's not their choice, right? They got discarded. Maybe it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but they can't stop thinking about them every day, and they haven't healed. Because that person with BPD who doesn't control everything about your choice points, but it feels like it, I know from the experience it feels like it. Well, with that happening, we get disempowered, and we don't feel like we have choices to make, and we don't feel like we can get away from them or live without them, but you can't live with them either. And it's really hell on wheels in life. It's awful. And so the thing that I just want to say, though, is that's when people need to reach out to get help, because you do have choice points and you do matter. And there is a road back to self, to finding yourself, to understanding how you got there is going to be a major point of change to help you start to move out of there. I mean, whether you have to literally make a move or etc. But emotionally, how can you understand how you got there, so that I help clients to start undoing all of that, plus to work on the abuse and how you've been traumatized by the borderline or the narcissist or the comorbidity both, and how that goes back to childhood, etc. But if you don't work this out, and if anybody is stuck anywhere and they don't have resources to get out, you have to be creative, but you have to know that you need to get out. And I've worked with clients too who have like a narcissistic parent or a borderline parent who's really elderly, and these people aren't young themselves now, and they're caretaking for the parent. And then some of them like I've had lots of clients over the years in this unfortunate situation where then they end up living again with the parent to caretake as they're going through a lot of difficulties with their health, etc. It's a freaking nightmare. That's another way that people are trapped, by the way. So if you have a narcissistic parent or a borderline parent or comorbidity both or whatever, and they're starting to really age and you're with a borderline and you're in a trauma bond, well, a lot of people that get trauma bonded to a borderline or narcissist in adult relationships, which you don't do that on purpose, you're not, but you're bringing something along that most people aren't consciously aware of. And the thing is, for people out there, this might resonate with, if you're on the precipice of a parent needing you to caretake for them and they're a borderline or a narcissist, and you've been like immensely hurt and traumatized by them, well, please reach out, if not to me, to somebody, because you need to stop yourself from getting in the situation, because that's a situation in which people can be trapped for just tons of time. Like if the parent hangs on through all kinds of health problems or Alzheimer's, etc., and you are there, you could be 10, 15 years of your, like, maybe older years. Like I'm in my 60s, and I mean, I went no contact from my family of origin. My BPD, NPD mother, really more covert narcissist than anything. My malignant narcissist father, the psychopath dark triad or tetrad, whatever, I don't know, therapist told me like a long time ago about that aspect of him. But the bottom line is, not only did I need to make the choice to go no contact from that kind of dysfunctional, narcissistic, dysfunctional, alcoholic family from origin, but I knew at a very young age, because of what I was going to, that I was never going to take care of these people. And not everybody knows that. And so it's really crucial, if maybe you've been in a relationship with a borderline narcissist, maybe you're still in a situationship, recycling, whatever, and you have a cluster B parent, and they're getting to that age and stuff is starting to happen. Don't let yourself get trapped again, because we have choice points. And when people blow through choice points, as I shared with you what I did, and I know exactly what you're going through, I've been through it, you need to get into working with someone to start to reclaim yourself and to work on the healing and to break the trauma bond. So though it feels impossible, and I understand what this person said about, it's funny how they described how they feel about the beginning of a relationship for them and the borderline hiding all this behavior, which is usually not the case, actually. And then somebody else and the way it ended for them, it all feels impossible when you've invested, when you've lost yourself, when you've been beaten down, when you bring your part of what it is that connects to the cluster B, the BPD or the NPD's trauma bond. A lot of people with codependency have a trauma bond to one degree or another, especially if they have a cluster B parent. And you bring that unknowingly, unconsciously into the relationship as well. But again, I am not saying, please hear me, I'm not saying that codependents are responsible for anything that the borderline or the narcissist or comorbidity both actually does really do to you. All of the accusations, all of the rage, all of the blaming, all of the guilting, all of the you should have this, you shouldn't have that, you. No, that's not your fault. And when they're triggered and triggers are ruptures and they can't repair ruptures and you can't get it repaired and you continue to go on, there are choice points there, but you're not aware of them because you've abandoned yourself. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that was helpful to someone today. And it might not be what anybody wants to hear, but borderlines can't make you get into a relationship of any kind with them. And a borderline or narcissistic parent also, if you haven't done any healing, it might be, but they shouldn't be able to make you get into taking care of them when you need to get some healing work done and get away from them and take care of you. And that feels impossible for people with different degrees and varying degrees of codependency. So I hope you hear what I'm saying, that it would help you to get into a process of healing, recovery, working with someone to do. And what I'm not saying is that any cluster B behavior, etc., abuse of you is your fault. No, not at all. Not your responsibility, not anything you chose. And people get stuck and trapped in these relationships in the trauma bonds as it is, whether what that commenter said about somebody getting like even more stuck by moving and everything to be with the person. We're all human, and I mean, I've got comments on the videos that I've done, what I talked about there, I'll just say quickly, where people actually try to victim blame me, and I don't feel like a victim of anybody now or anything. I'm a survivor, and a thriver. But people have said on a couple of my videos, AJ, you should have known better. I can't believe you didn't realize. I mean, I realized about the BPD, NPD alcoholic pretty quickly, right? But still, I was making poor choices based on something that I still needed to heal more as well, that had to do with how codependent I was still as well, and abandoning myself. But people actually have said to me, and nobody should say this to anybody, I'm not trying to shame anybody, we make choices. We have choice points in these relationships aside from what the cluster B is doing, but we're not consciously aware of those choice points. And yes, we can be very much manipulated and exploited by a cluster B, and it will make the choice points that we otherwise, as individuals and adults, would like to think we could make choices at certain points. No, they can really override that and make that much more difficult too. So I hope that I made that clear. But borderlines aren't making you be in the relationship, and they can't keep you stuck in the relationship. So you have to reach out and get some help, and you have to know that you've had choice points that maybe you weren't aware of, and maybe because of everything happening to you, you couldn't exercise. And I can say I can relate to that too with the BPD, NPD alcoholic, because she wasn't making me do any of it. But I, at the time, was really lost to myself. I was really like all up in her being more important than me. And I gotta do this. I don't even know if I ever actually felt that much love for her. I tried to love her and everything. But it was just, it's what hijacks us to bite the bait. And no, we can't know that at the time. Don't be hard on yourself. But there is a choice point there that we all blow through. and many choice points in these relationships that we can't really be aware of. And a lot of people aren't, because you're all up in them and trying to fix them and save them and focus on them. And you're not thinking about or even caring about yourself very much. So I hope that that wasn't too blunt, but I keep it real to help people heal, because maybe when you listen to a video like this, you're sitting wherever you are, or you're listening, you want whatever, and it gives you time and space to maybe something will resonate with you in a way that, I'm sorry, it might be really painful, but I hope it also gives people hope to know, reach out for help. There are choice points. Maybe you haven't been aware. And can those choice points be compromised by the brutality, the manipulation, and other things of a cluster B? Yes, definitely they can be. But at the end of the day, you need out, and you need to find your way to understanding why you couldn't get to or weren't consciously aware of your choice points. It's self-abandonment. It's just giving everything you got to the cluster B. And then you're so caught up in fighting for something that was never real in the first place, and you couldn't have possibly known that. But it doesn't mean that the borderline's hiding BPD behavior and it's all their fault, that you chose to be with them. I hope that helps somebody. Take care.